Hey everyone, my name is Rooster and welcome back to Mechabellum. Yesterday the EU Weekend Elite Tournament took place and I won it by only playing one strategy. What this strategy is what I wanted to highlight in this video. I think it is the most powerful in standard long-range games and it only revolves around two core units, the Arclight and the Sandworm. So without further ado, let's get into the finals and talk you guys through how to play this if you want to get some quick MMR at the end of the season. Alright, here we are. Now, when I'm playing this strategy, I'm looking for ideally a pack that either has Arclights, Stormcallers, or both. And so here I'm going to prioritize the Rhino Specialist pack with the Arclights and the Stormcallers. I think these two units are the most powerful starters if you're going to plan on playing a long-range game. And yeah, that is why I pick it. Rhino Specialist is lovely as well. You get those additional 300 resources on round 4, and you can even make a tempo play with it on that turn if you so desire. Now, obviously, the strat I'm going to talk about doesn't work if your opponent is pushing into you. If they are playing aggro, you will have to defend, and then what I'm going to explain now doesn't apply. However, if your opponent is playing a long-range game as well, then what you're going to do is this. What you see me do is I have these 3 Arclights here, one in front of the towers, one in the middle, and I'm aiming to have 2 on the sides as well, and then potentially 2 more in between the 3 that I currently have. On round 1, if you don't start with chaff, you're going to buy 2 chaff. Usually that's going to be the crawlers behind the towers. If you're starting with chaff and Stormcallers, for instance, then you're probably going to want to go for instance, if you have triple crawler, you buy 2 fangs. If you have triple fang, you buy 2 crawler. The fangs are going to go vertically behind these crawlers here. If you have 3 of them, you can put the 3rd one in the middle like so. That kind of covers your early game. And what you're going to prioritize doing for the first couple turns is get your 5 chaff onto the board. So 1, 2, and then a 3rd crawler in the back, 2 fangs behind the towers, and then 2 more crawlers actually here in the corner. So 7 packs of chaff, and you're going to prioritize the Arclights. And so the aim is going to be to have range Arclights on turn 3. Ideally, by that point, you'll have 5 Arclights, and they will be teched with range. Now my opponent here is a Sabertooth Specialist starting out with Sledgehammers and decides to go for double crawler with his Fang start instead of opting to go for something like Arclight. And that seems to work out for him, at least for now. Sledgehammer is at least good enough to deal with my 2 crawlers, but he will definitely need some additional chaff clear as we move forward. And yeah, as you can see, Stormcaller is just so powerful here in the early game. And that means I have a pretty good round 1. I mean, this is not an insubstantial amount of damage. Already 600 damage going the way of my opponent there. Round 2, we immediately get unit reinforcements. We have Wraith, Steel Ball, Wasp, and Marksman. Wasp here is annoying for both of us to deal with, so that's probably going to be the thing I want. Steel Ball, Wraith, both aren't great in standard, and it also doesn't allow me to deal with the Wasp, right? I'm concerned about my opponent picking this, so therefore I am picking it as well, so that hopefully we can trade, and yeah, with a bit of luck I might come out ahead and be able to take out his air units if he picks them. Marksman is an okay pick as well, but with the strategy that I like to play, Marksman is something that you will not need. Again, you're going to prioritize your Arclights, getting your 7 packs of chaff, and yeah, hopefully you'll have at least 2 Stormcallers. If you don't start with the Stormcaller pack, by the way, you can try and buy them. It kind of depends on the situation, whether or not you feel like Stormcallers will be valuable. I think the core of this comp is going to be the Arclights and the eventual Sandworms. So if you can't get your hands on them, then sometimes that's just going to be perfectly fine. Opponent opts to go for Marksman. I decide to go for the Wasps. I put them all the way in the back corner, and you can see I'm already working here on my chaff as I add 2 crawler packs all the way in the back. The reason I go for crawlers here is because my opponent didn't have Arclights yet, was relying on the sledges to chaff clear. Does add an Arclight this turn, but I thought crawlers are going to be a little bit more effective here into my opponent's board. and we will be adding fangs eventually. Opponent does get access to the Sabertooth this turn, but as you can see, did not put any chaff in front. Does go for a mobile beacon there, trying to distract the Stormcallers, but because I'm on the outside, it's not as easy to distract both of my Stormcallers, and so you can see the insta-lock happening there on the left side. It probably would have been better for my opponent if he had put the Sabertooth on the side that he was trying to distract, rather than on the other side, where as you can see, we got an insta-lock, and so the Saber did not do much at all. Seems like the marksman here and the power spike of that Saber, though, do pay off. Arclight did a good job, and it seems like I will be losing round 2, so my opponent immediately strikes back. We can speed things up here as we're waiting for my final Stormcallers to bite the dust. And as you can see, like, it's not even all that bad, right? Like, in these type of long-range games, you will often find that the Stormcallers are able to kill a lot of stuff, and so you're not too concerned about losing these rounds because you're only taking chip damage. Now, round 3, we get a choice of advanced power system, which I don't think is that great. I'm playing a long-range game. I don't really care about moving in fast. And when I'm playing Sandworms, I don't mind either, since Sandworms cannot be targeted while they're underground, so you don't really care about the travel speed. Photon coating can be fine, but I just kind of want the money. Extended range Arclight, I think, isn't a good card. The reason for that is that they can't one-shot same level crawlers if your opponent takes the defense enhancement from the tower. So that's why I don't go for it. And yeah, as you can see here, 5 Arclights, it's round 3, we grab range. I even have enough money left to be able to buy a Fang, so you can see that we're working on our 7 chaff packs. And yeah, the advantage of the Arclights here is simply going to be enough. You might be a little bit concerned and say, hey, you don't have any single target DPS apart from your Stormcallers. Aren't you just going to lose the rounds here because of lack of damage? And you'll be surprised at how good Arclights are at dealing with mid-sized units. Their damage is much higher than you'd expect. The Stormcallers, of course, help out a lot as well. You can see here, second and first on damage, of course. The Wasps can help as well. I'm keeping them because as long as my opponent only has Fangs, it's going to take him some time to get rid of these Wasps. And yeah, I want to keep them until he actually commits to a counter to them, like a proper counter, something like Mustang range, which then would play into my hand with the Arclights. But yeah, you can see here, left side, he still did not solve that issue, so Saber goes down instantly. With the range on my Arclight, I have the advantage over my opponents, so we're able to get rid of an Arclight there on the corner. The Wasps are still being a nuisance on the right side. You can see a couple Fangs are alive, but because of the range, I'm managing to take out some of them, and that is distracting that marksman for long enough that my Arclight should be able to feast on them, and that does seem to be the case. I will get debuffed on the left side, however, but 2 of my Arclights and a Stormcaller pack are safe on the outside. Moving towards a tower of their own, we'll have to see if this debuff will be enough for me to take the round. I think it will be. Yep, you can see Arclight there farming, even managing to get a level 3 there. On round 4, that is very high pace, and already I feel like my odds of winning this game are fantastic. Subsidized Stormcaller shows up, not something I'm interested in. Advanced defensive tactics, too expensive. Quick cooldown, I don't have any spells, so no need to pick it. Immobilized Battleship, yet again, hard to make use of and too expensive at this stage. I just want to set up my board so that on round 5, ideally, I can get to Sandworm. So here you will see me skip. I get access to my Rhino. I briefly am considering, should I keep the Rhino? I'm kind of trying to move it in the outside because I was relying on this Sabertooth dying every single time, so I wasn't too concerned that it would die to the Saber if I put it all the way in the back. However, I'm looking at my money and I take all the levels on the Arclights and I think to myself, you know what? Let's just go for Elite right off the bat. Let's sell that Rhino, get the cash, and you can see that now I have got all the chaff I want. We've got our 5 packs of Crawlers, we've got our 2 packs of Fangs. We're all set, and I'm even a bit ahead of the curve, as Elite is usually something that I would be expecting to get much later into the game. But since I have so much money and the early game went so well, we are already able to afford it. And here my opponent makes a mistake. And this is not obvious if you're playing Standard, but The composition I'm playing is very, very good into things like marksman, stormcallers, sledges. The Sandworm doesn't care about range, right? That's what it punishes. It cannot be shot on the ground, so it will always fight on its terms, which means close range. And so if your opponent goes for heavy marksman boards and goes for range like this, it just plays into your hand as the Arclight Sandworm player, because that is what you punish. And so already, when I saw this, I was expecting to close out this game. That's how confident I am in how powerful this strategy is. Arclights here doing a good job. Obviously, the marksman will win out for now. They have that range advantage over my Arclights. But my opponent's Shaft Clear is not the best, right? He's lacking that those Arclights. And the sledgehammers are simply not going to be good enough. And so even though I am losing left side, right side yet again is winning. And the debuff here I don't think will be significant, as I'll be able to get a debuff in return, which should allow me to kill the opponent's marksman there. And it's just chip damage for now, but I've managed to bring my opponent down to 3k in the first 4 rounds. And now I can start to pick up the pace and start working on my giants. Round 5, we get free units as early as possible, and so especially when you get this cash injection on round 5, you should start to build worms. You want to get ahead, because if your opponent goes for a similar strategy, then getting the units first, getting levels first, getting techs first is going to matter a lot and will allow you to win in the mirror. So especially if you get this cash injection, just pick something you can sell easily. And then, yeah, go for those worms. My opponent here could pick Phoenix, and I don't have great anti-air, right? I only have the 2 Fang packs, but it would be a bit weird for them to do that, as it runs counter to the marksman that they already have on the board, so I wasn't expecting it. I also do have the Wasps, so I was willing to take that risk. If he wins just because of 2 Phoenixes, I won't be taking too much damage. Instead, I take the Scorpion, I instantly sell it for maximum cash, and that allows me to get double worm and instantly get armor enhancement. The most important techs on the Sandworm are going to be armor enhancement, not because of the passive effect, but because of the 50% bonus HP. As you can see, these worms now have 73,000 damage, and that is without something like a fortified spec, without the first defense enhancement. They are very, very tanky. Something like the Fortress here only has 44,000. And the other tech that's going to be really useful is Replicate. Replicate is really, really strong if your opponent tries to play Melter into this board. And I'm stacking one side, making sure that the Wasps are kind of protected, and making sure that the worms can work in tandem to beat whatever they may face. Opponent guesses correctly though, and I think he was expecting this, as I had been playing this composition throughout the tournament and was talking about it on stream. And yeah, buys a Fortress there, but that's not going to be enough. This armor enhancement and the sheer amount of hit points on the worm will mean that I get ahead. Stormcallers are doing a fantastic job here, by the way. And yeah, we managed to take out the Farseer that was added, even though it is on the side of the Wasps. And you can see how annoying the Wasps are being, right? My opponent manages to kill them most rounds, but it takes so much effort that they end up losing. And suddenly, I start dealing loads of damage, right? Opponent now down to 1400. And we enter round number 6. Intensive training shows up. Underground threat pretty good as well, but the intensive is very tempting, as it allows me to get another worm and instantly make sure that it goes to level 2, so that's why I pick it up. Super supply is way too late. I would only really insta-pick this if it showed up on turn 4. And laser sight is not that great. At least not necessary at this point. And what's so powerful about this comp is that Sandworm, right, beats Marksman. It invalidates the range advantage they have. They're very tanky, so there's only a couple things that can really beat them. It's going to be something like Melter, but Melter then loses to Replicate and EMP Arclight. Keep in mind, Arclight is an absolute core of this comp. It is also equally part of what makes it so powerful. So Melter is not really that good. Fortress, technically speaking, should be pretty decent in Sandworm. With techs like Overload, it should be able to kill the larves and it should be able to DPS down the worm. However, Fortress is not a good unit in Standard. So even though I'm playing worms now, this comp with Arclights, Stormcallers also allows me to then get into Melter if my opponent really doubles down on the Fortresses, and then I'm playing, again, a winning matchup in the long range. Melter Fortress in Standard is winning for Melters. So this is the tricky part. Other things you could try is like Scorpions, put them all the way in the back, give them Acid. I think Acid is one of the better counters to Sandworm, but it's not a guaranteed counter. You just kind of have to hope that the engagement goes the right way. Opponent here going for a cheeky missile, but the crawlers are running in front. If your opponent likes the missile, you at the start, you can just put like a crawler in front and beacon it as well. But yeah, you can see here, I've already got 4 worms, one of them leveled thanks to the intensive. My opponent also leveled one of their fortresses, but again, because of the armor, we're dealing good damage to that fortress, and it will end up falling to the Stormcallers and the Arclight. And what's so good about this is that while the opponent is kind of just scrambling to try and kill the worms, you've got high-level Arclights slowly scaling, slowly DPSing in the backline. And this allows you to win a matchup with Arclight, which is normally losing, right? Arclights are supposed to lose against Marksman because they can't compete with the range, but Sandworm completely changes the equation, and that's why you don't see any long-range DPS on my board. There's no need for it. Round 7, we get Smoke Bomb, Photon Emission, Underground Threat. Here, I decide to go for Smoke Bomb because it's potentially the final round, and I wasn't sure my opponent was willing to invest in shields. And so what you'll see me do is just layer it in the middle there, trying to hit as many units as possible, and really annoy my opponent's units as much as I can. I get a level on the Sandworm that just leveled in and of itself after the last 2 turns. Photon Emission, by the way, does not work on Sandworms. They burrow too quickly, so you cannot hit them with that spell. Keep that in mind. It also doesn't work with things like Farseer Photon or Overlord Photon. Don't try it. It doesn't work. More fortresses show up, and my opponent goes for mechanical range on the Fangs. I'm not exactly sure what that was supposed to do. This might have been a misclick. As perhaps Ignite was something that they wanted to pick. They go for the Photon Emission. And I undo my Smoke Bomb. I think I was trying to reposition it there. Yeah, I decided to use it more on the right side. Trying to hit the Farseer, trying to hit those fortresses. And you can see that I triple tech my Arclights now. I preemptively go for EMP, expecting a tech on the fortresses. And yeah, I mean, EMP Arclight is just so powerful in the background. And you can see how much DPS these Arclights have. Right? Look at this level 5. It's slowly ramping up the damage. This fortress here has pretty much been only getting hit by this Arclight, and it goes down. That's a level 5 Arclight taking down a level 1 Giant. And even though the EMP here doesn't really get value, because there's no text to disable, we still end up winning. That's how powerful our composition is at this point. And so that means that on round 7, we close out the final game of the tournament and we win the badge. If you think that my opponents perhaps made some mistakes, of course they did, but this is a extremely difficult comp to counter. The reason that I'm playing it is because I don't want my opponents to play this into me. I will do absolutely everything to make sure that I am ahead in this matchup, because I don't want to be on the receiving end of it, right? You have to jump through lots and lots of hoops to be able to deal with the composition that is so easy to play as this one. It's literally just Arclights, range them by turn 3, and then try and get to worms by round 5. That's it. That's your game plan. The game plan on the opponent's side is, how do you deal with the Sandworms? What is going to be your counter? If you play Fortress, how are you going to deal with the potential Melter response, right? Do you play Fang Production? Fang Production technically can be good. Shielded Fangs, Ignite Fangs should both be really good into Arclights and Sandworms, but you need to get there still. And it's not impossible for me to transition into just, you know, Fire Stormcallers and Melters. If you want to play Scorpion, are you going to be able to get there in time, right? Will the Scorpions actually hit the Sandworms and will they die in time? How do you deal with the Arclights in the back that are going to slowly scale up with Elite and potentially EMP your units at the same time? How are you going to deal with the potential Wasps that I can add to the board? All of these things are so hard and so difficult to answer that it just means that, you know, because I don't have to think too much, my composition is easier to get off the ground, and I don't have to worry about all the ifs, buts, and maybes. I can show you guys a brief part of a different game that I played against a 2300 MMR player, and they were trying to do the exact same thing back into me, because they realized this was probably the most effective way of dealing with the comp is just playing it themselves, but it's unsuccessful. Let's quickly go there, and then I'll finish the video. Alright, here is the other game. I fast forwarded to round 5. We have intensive training here available yet again, and it is the famed round 5 Worm Time round. Both of us pick it up. If you can have a quick look at the board, you can see that it is awfully similar to the boards I've been playing so far. We can count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 crawlers. In this particular game, I started with 3 fangs, so here they are. So I've got 8 chaff in total. You can see that in this particular game, I end up having a few more Arclights. I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 Arclights. Could even go for a 9th one if I had the deployments. But yeah, you can see that this is literally just Arclight spam. The same 2 Stormcallers on the outside. I happen to have a Farseer because of Farseer spec, but the setup is exactly the same. My opponent going for kind of a similar thing. You see the chaff, slightly different layout, but still works about the same. Started with sledges. He started to sell out of that. Has range on the Arclights. And yeah, Stormcallers outside, has a couple marksmen, right? Already, my opponent has some inefficiency here, right? I don't need marksmen. I don't need marksmen for this comp. I just need Arclights. So I'm ahead in that regard. My chaff clear is slightly better. Let's keep playing the round. You can see my opponent knows what's going on, right? He's a very skilled player, 2300 MMR. And they pick up the worm. They also picked up the intensive, and they make sure they have a level 2 Sandworm. I do the same thing. Neither of us is a giant spec. Both of us were a specialist with 300 bonus resources in the form of a Typhoon for my opponent, a Farseer on my end. I decide to sell out of it because I level up the Sandworm and I instantly give it armor. And this already decides the game. More or less, this already decides the game. I've got the advantage here of 50% more hit points. So if you look at my Sandworm, it has 30,000 hit points more than my opponent. 35,000 even. Now, my opponent does have the defense enhancement on the tower. I don't. Probably should have had it by now. But either way, I have about 35,000 hit points of difference. That's 2 attacks from the Sandworm. And so, what you're going to see in this round is that I have a bit of luck. And I also have the tech, right? To allow me to get ahead in this matchup. Now, both of us do happen to put the Sandworm on the same side. I have no real way of telling how this round would have gone otherwise. In fact, I had no real way of telling how this round would go. I know I'm favored because of the tech, but that's about all I know. You can see that the Sandworms here kind of walk past one another. My opponent does have the advantage with the DPS somewhat, thanks to those marksmen. So he's chipping away at my Sandworm, and it's getting towards a similar health pool total as the opponent's Sandworm over here. The right side is somewhat of a stalemate. Seems like the Stormcallers from my opponent win out, but that's going to be about it. And yeah, Sandworm here going to go for the tower, and same thing for my opponent. And what we look at here is the experience total. I'm slightly ahead, but if either Sandworm manages to kill the other, then they are going to level for sure. And that will decide how this goes. The debuff wears off, and you can see that my Sandworm goes for the tower instead, the opponent's Sandworm comes out of the ground, and because of that, you can see the golden glow. My Sandworm levels. And that is simply game. That is game. It's over, right? My opponent cannot come back from this because I have a Sandworm level advantage now. I have the tech advantage as well. So it's much easier for me to just keep buying Sandworms because with this type of mirror matchup, I should be ahead, right? I have a higher level Sandworm and I have one more tech. So my opponent will have to try and find a way of somehow dealing with that. The problem is he already invested into Sandworm himself, so that's kind of a dead investment at this point. And yeah, if he wanted to go for a different comp, which he kind of needs to now, he's already like down in efficiency, right? Now we get insanely good items here on round 6, which even furthers the problem of that level. But it kind of goes to show how quickly these games can turn and how important it is to have your setup working by those crucial rounds. I decided to pick up the Nano Repair Kit because I think it's still really powerful, especially when I have a level 3 Sandworm with armor. My opponent picks up armor as well, picks up the portable shield, and instead of trying to go for a different unit like a Fortress or a Melter, he decides to try and make a difference in terms of techs. So he instantly double techs his Sandworm there with armor and replicate, and adds another Sandworm to try and overwhelm my side of the board. I'm unfazed because I know I'm ahead, so I just decide to go for more Sandworms on the outside. I don't think I need replicate here. It's not necessarily that insane into these Arclights and Marksmen, and I want to get the worms on the board. Adding them to the right side should mean that I can just beat the right side of the board and probably get a debuff. And I know this Sandworm is unkillable. If my opponent doesn't buy a Melter at this stage, this is never going to die. You will in fact see that his Sandworm is attacking mine. However, my Sandworm is just regenerating all the damage it's taking. And it's even worse than that. It's not getting attacked by just a Sandworm, it's also getting attacked by 2 Marksmen, a Stormcaller, 2 Arclights, and a couple Larves. That is how powerful it is. And yeah, right side there wins out. My 2 Sandworms are still alive. They managed to get a debuff. And so, just like that, even though both of us were pretty much playing the same composition, I managed to get a win. This was on round number 5. This was the semifinals. And yeah, it shows you how powerful this composition is, right? It's the exact same setup, exact same game plan. And if you can manage to get ahead, then that's simply going to be the end of it. Arclights there finishing off the final units, and with 3 worms alive, round 6 game is over. This is the comp that I wanted to showcase you guys. I don't know if there's going to be any changes. I would imagine there probably will be, either to Arclight or Sandworm, as we enter Season 2 on January 2nd. Until then, if you like playing Standard and you want to get some MMR at the end of the season, I highly recommend you try this out. It's a very, very easy comp to play, right? Get your Arclights early on, get your Chaff early on, aim for Arclight range by round 3, aim for Sandworms on round 5, and you're going to be golden. Sometimes you may have to add some units to be able to deal with an air threat, but you're pretty flexible. And yeah, the Sandworms will just mean that you dominate the ground. Have you tried this comp? What do you think of it? Do you struggle dealing with it? Let me know down below. If you want to see me play live, check me out on Twitch. If you want to stay up to date with all my latest content, please consider subscribing. And with that being said, have a lovely rest of your day. Take care and see you in the next video. Bye-bye.